sense of who's in the room. How many people are entrepreneurs in the room? Okay, awesome. How many people are life science entrepreneurs in the room? Okay. How many people are tech entrepreneurs in the room? Okay, great. How many people are clean tech entrepreneurs in the room? Okay, great. How many people are design entrepreneurs in the room? Okay, excellent. Other entrepreneurs not already listed? Is that right? Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, now accountants. Excellent. Everybody knows who the accountants are. Investors. We have a couple. They have this shorter hands because they have to be careful. And then we have other people who are here. Okay, so good. So I hope everybody else was looking around because it'll help you when you go to network. So what we're going to do, here's our plan for tonight. First, we're going to have the program representatives talk about the incentive programs. There are a number of brand new incentives that the governor has announced, and Steve Cohen is here. We'll introduce him in a second. They will discuss the incentives, and then we are going to have some questions about who is like their ideal applicant, how do you go about applying, what are the deadlines, when you get access to some of this incentive money, how does this work? We will, after that, have a wrap-up because there's a lot of different incentives we're going to talk about at the state level, at the city level, 2 different agencies in the city. We have one of the organizations in the city that's been designated a particular type of incubator. You'll hear about that. We'll try and weave in how that relates to these incentives. We also have an entrepreneur who has taken advantage of incentives from on a number of different levels, so you can kind of hear about a case study of how they've navigated these incentive programs. Then we're going to have a wrap-up by Anshin Black & Anshin's partner from the tax side, Paul Geburtzman, who is going to help explain about those tax implications for your business, not just at the city and state level, but also at the federal level, okay? So, also Rick Stieglitz from Anshin is going to be available in the room after the speech from Anshin to answer questions. Anshin people have special badges, so you can kind of pick them out. So, if we have time, and it's night at 7:30, we'll take questions from the audience. But because we know that everybody's here to get information and meet face-to-face with people, we are actually going to set this up so that the panel is going to move to the back of the room at 7:30, and there are tables set up, one for each of the panelists. Jeffrey Wang is going to get something to eat, and he's promised to talk to people. But you'll have a chance to meet with people. And they brought some information, but really it's an opportunity. You may not get all your questions answered, but at least you'll meet the people, and they'll be able to put you in touch with other people and start this process of helping you understand what's available. We're very fortunate. On your far right, Steve Cohen is here, the Deputy Commissioner and Senior Vice President for Community Economic Development for New York State's Empire State Development. He's a career policymaker and program implementation head. Steve will share a lot of news about the governor's programs, the initiatives, and the funding opportunities. So he's got a lot of different programs. Get out a piece of paper. There's a lot he's going to be sharing with us.
First of all, thanks so much. It's an honor to be here. I'd like to thank the MIT Entrepreneurship Forum and Anshin, and thanks for that introduction. If I am a career policymaker, it's a very short career because I've only been in government for a few years, 3 or 4 years. But before that, I have been in economic development and was an entrepreneur myself. I had a music production company that I did for many years, so understand it from the business side too. And one exciting thing about being at the state now is the governor really understands the importance of small business and high growth entrepreneurship and innovation as it relates to growing the economy and how critical that is, both to growing small businesses that are here and also creating an environment that's attractive for business startup and business growth and business attraction and those sorts of things. So it's an exciting time in the sense that there are a lot of new initiatives and incentives and programs available for entrepreneurs as they launch these types of companies. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what those are. There are a lot of them. I'm going to highlight some, and I'm not going to be able to go into as much detail. Happy to speak with you later about it, and also I'll tell you how to find out more details about the program at the end, so you don't have to feel like you have to, write down everything about all these programs. But I want to highlight a few areas of commitment for the governor and for the state and for us as the economic development agency of the state. Clearly one of them is around incentives and facilities and benefits for being located at certain facilities such as Startup New York and those sorts of things. Incubators and hotspots and those sorts of initiatives. Another is certainly around funding. So this is for the first, not the first time, but at a scale that hasn't been seen maybe ever. At the state, there's a lot of investment in equity programs, so a public-private partnership around equity in very, very young companies. And so there are two major funds totaling about $95 million that's sort of being dedicated to that, leveraging many more millions of dollars there. So we'll talk about a little bit about the VC funding there. There's also a number of other financing programs, either debt or around facilities, upgrading or purchase and those sorts of things, so I'll just mention those. Other incentives in terms of tax breaks, and then just some funding that we have around supporting mentorship of these types of companies and sharing a little bit about the centers that we support in terms of developing technology and linking those up with businesses and commercializing that technology. So certainly one of the highest profile programs to come along in a while, you've probably seen the ads, is of course Startup New York. So Startup New York is really an approach to creating tax-free zones for business across the state. And so that's partnering with educational institutions to identify space where businesses can locate. It can be on campus, it can be adjacent, it can be associated with the campus. It is tax-free for 10 years, and tax-free means completely tax-free. So that is corporate tax, sales tax, property tax, individual income tax for both the owner and the employees for 10 years. And the level is set at about, very high, so it's set at about 10,000 jobs per year. I think it's 120 million square feet, 120 million square feet of facilities. So it's a very big effort. It's currently underway. You can register your business with the Startup New York program and go through an eligibility screen. Universities are now identifying space to be included in the program. Here in the city, CUNY has the ability to identify space, as do some private institutions, and SUNY and Biobat is really looking at the program, and there's likely to be some space there as well. So that's all happening right now, and that's a very exciting program. There are other initiatives, so I can dive into that, and if there are specific questions, as there usually are, I'm happy to sort of answer them about startup. But there are some other initiatives that could be relevant. So for the first time in the state's history, I think, we are providing some organized funding and certifying business incubators throughout the state as New York State certified incubators. And that's an attempt really to link up the incubator network in ways that haven't been before, to make sure that we have a better idea of what the pipeline of companies is going through those incubators. We can cycle certain companies that might be appropriate or not yet appropriate for Startup New York into some of those incubators, incubate them, they get ready for other programs like Startup and so forth. That can be a useful process as well. So we have identified the first round of incubators receiving funding under that program. Some that have an enhanced methodology, sort of an enhanced incubator best practice and so forth, can get designated as an incubator hotspot. And if you are an incubator hotspot, there are also incentives, tax breaks associated with the companies that are located there. Not quite as rich as Startup New York, but they are, you do get rid of the corporate taxes and so forth. So there are some tax benefits for being located in innovation hotspot. In terms of the venture funding, so there are two major new funds around venture, VC, and that is the Innovate New York Fund. So that is a $45 million fund. It's $35 million of state money. We were able to secure an additional $10 million from Goldman Sachs. And then that's leveraged with private money, other private money on a deal-by-deal basis. We have selected 7, soon to be 8 investment fund managers around the state to make investments in seed stage companies. So seed stage companies, as we define it, is pre-revenue, early revenue, or first institutional money in. We've done over 40 of those investments in about a year. And so that program is going extremely well, and money is getting into the hands of those businesses. The leverage is significant too. I believe it's over 8 to 1 now on that fund. So the maximum amounts there are $500,000, $750,000 in the case of life sciences. And so there are 3 participating investment fund managers that are really focused downstate and located around here. One is Stonehenge Growth Capital, the other is FF Asset Management, and the third is Golden Seeds. Golden Seeds has an interesting model. They focus on companies that have women in the C-suite of the companies. So they have an interesting approach there. The second fund is the new $50 million Innovation Venture Capital Fund, similarly named fund that is able to do pre-seed investments of lower amounts, so to go a little before seed stage, so maybe post proof of concept, prototype. All the way up to early stage or even venture stage for companies that are relocating to the state or expanding in a very significant way. So that has a little bit of a broader range. It also allows us to, we're taking a little bit more of a direct approach with that fund as well. We're sort of folding in what has been a legacy fund at the state called Small Business Technology Investment Fund into that, which only has about $3 million left, but that's being folded into this effort. And so that allows us to focus on areas where there is a disparity or there could be more public sector focus. So life sciences might be one of those areas where there's a little bit more limited availability for capital. So the status of that fund is we're still in the comment to the rulemaking process, which is almost over, and then that fund will launch soon thereafter. So that's a very exciting initiative as well. I want to talk a little bit about other financing programs that's not equity. So our Small Business Revolving Loan Fund, $50 million fund. Actually, it was expected to be 50. It's actually more than that because the match ended up being more. So we've done $68 million through that program already. So those are loans of up to $250,000 through non-bank lenders, 20 non-bank lenders around the state. Unlike many of these public sector funds, startups are eligible under the program. Refinancing of existing debt is also eligible under that program, and 20 lenders participate in that program around the state. There's another very big program called the JDA Direct Loan Program. That's up to $3.5 million, and that's mostly for facilities. So if you're purchasing a building, you're renovating a building, you're buying machinery and equipment, very attractive terms on those types of loans, maybe similar to SBA 504, but we can go even higher in terms of the stake that we can take, and the fee structure is pretty desirable through that program, and that's something that we actually do directly at Empire State Development. Another program I just want to highlight is called the Link Deposit Program, which is not new, but it does buy down your interest rate at banks. So 72 banks participate around the state. So if that is something that you are pursuing in terms of bank loans, you should mention the link deposit program or contact us to find out if the bank participates, and we can connect you with a loan officer who knows about the program and those sorts of things. And that just lowers your interest rate by a commensurate amount in terms of the amount that the state would have earned on our deposit at that institution. You don't have to worry about the mechanics, you just get the rate discount, but that's how that program works, and that's actually a pool of about $460 million that helps make that program work. The Excelsior tax credit is probably the largest tax credit program that we have, and that is for investments in R&D and commitments for jobs and those sorts of things. Those are typically awarded through the regional council process, so projects are proposed and then these incentives as it relates to tax credits related to those types of benchmarks are awarded, but that's a very significant program as well, Excelsior tax credit. Another new major program about to launch is something called Business Mentor NY. So the theory behind that is, there are a lot of these centers that exist out there that we fund that are the Centers for Advanced Technology, the Centers of Excellence, the Regional Technology Development Centers. You have the state and SUNY doing the Small Business Development Centers. The city has the Business Solution Centers. We have the Entrepreneurial Assistance Centers that does entrepreneurship training and those sorts of things. But a lot of those centers are, professional counselors, many skilled, providing assistance to businesses. But Business Mentor NY is really a platform for linking business professionals that are active and in their mid-career, providing guidance and mentorship to young companies. And obviously, high-growth entrepreneurship and innovation is sort of one area of the small business environment that we're looking at. So that platform is going to launch in the next few months. And it's a partnership that we have with MicroMentor, which is an initiative of Mercy Corps, and so we're launching that deeply here in the state. And we'll have a number of mentors that you can find for your business. For those of you that are sort of skilled professionals who want to give back, you can be mentors through that platform too. And that links folks up either with simple questions or more intensive mentoring style engagements. So how do you find out about all those programs and how can we help you? So you can contact the Small Business Division at Empire State Development, and we have folks that will live people who will walk you through these programs and determine what might actually be appropriate for you. Downstate Martha Otero is the Ombudsman Business Advisor for us focused on downstate, and she can help navigate all these various programs and find the right contact people and people that can help you. I can also help you later if you want to talk to me after this presentation and so forth. And then also there are various guides on our website. There's a directory of small business programs which links 140 programs across 28 agencies or resources that are appropriate for small business. You can download it to your desktop. There's a link on the small business page of the ESD website to something called the Small Business Resource Center, which lists a bunch of resources in startup assistance, financial assistance, mandated government filings, industry-specific resources, those sorts of things. So just the takeaway in terms of finding out more about all these programs is to go to the Empire State Development website. On the homepage, you'll obviously see things like Startup New York, but you can click on small business, get access to some of these other guides and information on these programs, and you can contact the Small Business Division, and we'll actually walk you through that and hear a little bit about your business and do a little concierge service in terms of like what could be appropriate for you. So I think that's it for now. I'm happy to answer any questions at the end and talk to you afterwards.
Thank you very much, Steve. So that's a lot of different programs. So what we want to do next is hear from Eva Kramer about how some of those programs work in an incubator. Okay, so Eva, if you could share what's available through Downstate, Biobat, and the Advanced Biotech Incubator. Thank you.
Okay, hi, welcome everyone. And if you're interested in space, either as a small startup company or where you need, let's say, between lab bench and 4,000 square feet, then you would be interested in the Downstate Biotech Incubator. If you need space that's greater than 4,000 square feet and you're a more mature company, then you would be interested in Biobat at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. Both sites have been designated a certified business incubator. And along with that program, we are in the midst of developing an entrepreneurship program together actually with Mary that will help our companies within the incubators. Both the Biotech Incubator and Biobat have been designated as New York State tax-free zones, so all the wonderful things you just heard from Steve apply here. The space here is not only for life science companies, but for technology companies. So let me tell you about each of them a little bit. So the Downstate Biotechnology Incubator is currently 24,000 square feet, and this new addition that's right here will be online in June. So it will now be 50,000 square feet, so there's significant space available for new companies. This new addition is built to LEED Silver specification. It is set up so that you can take a module or an office space. There's a core facility room, and there's conference space. We have a specialized nursery program for companies, for instance, that have just gotten their first SBIR grant and really can't afford a lot of space, but would like to share space. And that program enables you to share with other companies equipment and the costs for the space. If you are either at the incubator or at Biobat, you have access to university resources. That includes working with our scientists and clinicians. You can work with our students. Downstate is a medical center. It has both PhD and MD PhD students. You can use our library. You have access to our animal facilities. For some companies, that's very important. You have access to specialized research facilities that are at the university, as well as the ability to work with our clinicians on clinical trials. The incubator actually sits next, just down the street from the subway, which is the 2 and the 5 line. The incubator itself also has its own parking facility. When you get more successful and you want to grow, then you can move to Biobat at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. Our first graduate was the International AIDS Vaccine Initiative, IAVI, which took 38,000 square feet at Biobat and moved into phase 1. IRX is going to be our second company that will outgrow the incubator and move into Biobat. So over here, the Brooklyn Army Terminal is 97 acres of land. It sits on the waterfront. It has its own dock. It has its own heliport, actually. And these two buildings together are 4 million square feet. We have leased 500,000 square feet in Building A, which sits next to the water. We are building it out in phases. So the first phase was for IAVI, which was 38,000. The second phase now is 85,000 square feet. We've just completed that, and now we are actively leasing that space. As with the incubator, it was built as state-of-the-art LEED Silver space. This is a joint venture between the New York City EDC and Downstate Medical Center. I'm sorry, has easy access.
I was wondering whether it was going to go there.
Oh, it's okay.
This is not flying a plane.
I'll try not to hit you. Next, okay. So, is easy access to the various New York City research institutions. And not only can you get here by subway, which is the N and the R, and there's plenty of parking space, but I'm not gonna use the pointer anymore. But coming off at the dock, there's a water taxi that goes to Lower Manhattan. And someday, the East River will become this biotech hub where you can go from Biobat over to East River Science Park, up to Cornell's new technology center. And so I think it's very exciting. And so I will be in the back, and we handed out, this is two-sided, tells you about the incubator and Biobat, and we're happy to talk with you afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva. So now, as we're trying to peel back the onion about how all of these programs work and who's involved, we've asked Jeffrey to come and talk about, as an entrepreneur, how he's navigated these different programs and how he sees them and what these incentive programs mean for him.
I'm going to spend 1 minute just to describe IRX, to put it in context. You know, IRX is a classic drug discovery company. Our founders found a drug substance, they tested it offshore, and when they brought it onshore, we were first located in Florida, and then for a number of reasons that didn't include incentives at that time, migrated to New York. So you can grow a life sciences company in New York. That's not news to the people that are here, but it is news to some other people who are less familiar with what New York City, New York State have to offer. I mean, I'm here to basically support the thesis that we as a company would not have gotten through some tough times, would not have progressed as far as we've progressed without literally the assistance of everybody at this table, or every agency at this table. Dr. Kramer has already talked about the fact that we are tenants at Downstate. What she didn't say was we were unceremoniously thrown out of the incubator in Long Island. I called up everybody I knew and met Dr. Kramer, and she said, well, I just happened to have 2 lab modules coming free, and within a matter of 60 days, I'm glad she didn't check our credit rating because we wouldn't have passed it. She agreed to take us on as a tenant, and we've been there a number of years, and her investment in us obviously is going to grow into our joining IAVI over at Biobat and taking 6,000 or 7,000 square feet there later on this year. So her investment, her faith in us paid off. As well, New York State had prior programs that no longer exist, that we pulled down money, having spent research dollars in the state, having employed a certain number of people, and that got us through some difficult times. New York City has various programs, one of which is still in play, the biotech tax credit, which is a reminder to my SVP Finance over there, we have to do our tax returns so that we can qualify and receive the tax credit from New York City. So the little story behind the New York City tax credit, which I probably shouldn't say, was there was a dark time in fundraising where we literally had no money in the bank. It happened to coincide with having filed our tax return and receiving the prior year's tax rebate. That $200,000+ covered payroll for 3 months and bridged us to when we were able to close our next investor round. So in aggregate, I'm going to estimate that between the New York City, New York State, and if I give Dr. Kramer some credit for subsidized below market rent, approximately 10% of our funding has come from the sources at this table. Now, you know, what's 10%? Well, I think the entrepreneurs in this room know very well how hard it is to raise the first $1 million, the first $100,000. And if you can supplement that by just taking the time to fill out the forms, to call the people who are available to help you fill out those forms. The money is there, the money's allocated, but it's your job in this room to capitalize on it. And I know we're all busy. We're focused on our technology. We're focused on our drug development. We don't have a staff. Find somebody to do it. The forms themselves are pretty simple. If you have a vision for your company, I think you can put down on paper what you expect to see happen over the next few years. And it's a projection, but the forms themselves is name, rank, serial number, what's your business, what do you think's going to happen, how many jobs could you create, what do you think you could be spending. I think if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, you should have a vision of that. You just got to put it down on paper, take the time to do it, get it in on time. For New York State and for New York City, there are people there to help you navigate. You know, there are probably on this table 50 plus programs. It's a little tough to sort of figure out which ones you're eligible for. You can pick up the phone, get someone at New York City EDC to say which programs might I be eligible for, and you can focus on filling those in. We did that, and the people at New York City and at New York State were very helpful in helping us navigate. You know, there are programs, as Steve hasn't mentioned, that I have somebody at an accounting firm help me figure out, you know, whether we're eligible. So there are a lot of resources around to help you do it. If you have any questions about degree of difficulty, applicability to life sciences, applicability to tech, I'll be in the back wandering around, as Mary said. So, and my partner, Curtis Robb, is also with me. He personally filled out the forms for New York State's recent programs, so he's familiar with that. I did all the form for New York City and New York State in the past, so that's it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate hearing the story from one of the entrepreneurs as well. Don, if you could share with us the New York City small business programs.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anyone here? Hi. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
And thank everyone. Don John Pietro. I'm the Assistant Commissioner of Business Incentives at the Department of Small Business Services. We work jointly with EDC. And with our Department of Finance, that is the tax collector, we probably administer most of the city's benefits. Actually, we have on the city side over 42 various incentives, so this is a good complement to what Jeff had stated. So I'm just going to go over briefly some of the portfolio and those that would be specific to this audience, just to let you know that some of our programs, our standard programs, which I'll speak to briefly and in more detail later, can be applied to growing firms, technology firms, biotech firms, and technology firms of all in various stages of their life cycle. So again, they're not exclusively for this, for biotech and technology, but they can be applied. Usually, again, most of our programs are either discretionary, our incentives are discretionary or as of right. Discretionary, Jeff will probably speak to later, where there's some negotiation, some discussion, some latitude in what is required of a company, and the as of rights, which there are many. They have, as Jeff said, and I'll underscore this, specific and strict filing requirements, because they're not entitlements, they're incentives. So they ask you to do make different action, which has impact on the city. Typically, where you move to, what you invest in, both furniture, fixtures, and equipment, capital, CapEx, into a facility, working, if you're small and not capitalized, with a developer or landlord to improve a property or move into a property that the city has renovated, such as BAT, we call it BAT, it's also BioBat, Brooklyn Army Terminal, or the Navy Yard, the Brooklyn Navy Yard, other portfolio properties that we have in the city, or private buildings that have been renovated by private developers utilizing our city incentives, which also qualify those properties to become what we call special eligible premises. They may not be officially labeled as incubators, but practically speaking, because they come with a set of incentives, they could be also viable options to grow both new and existing businesses. And I also want to state this. Sometimes the bias is that many of our programs are only for existing businesses, and that targeted programs, like the biotechnology programs, are for startups. Actually, some of the programs can be used for startups. And we have the difference between exemptions and abatements. And just to let you know that exemptions and abatements, both on real property taxes, as well as now rent, which we hadn't done in the past. Rent now can receive certain abatements and rebates, working with your developer and the owner of your property, which I'll explain in more detail. And of course, like the biotechnology credit, where we, against the prior year's taxes, you're able to write off certain types of investment. I won't speak to, because this is an accounting company, in too much detail, but basically there are various credits that exist annually, or perhaps after 2 or 3 years may change. So always ensure that your tax preparer, I think this is a great example that Jeff mentioned, is always in the room, at least in discussions when you go forward with these tax benefits. So basically there's 4 triggers for our programs: purchasing or improving property, recruiting and training employees. That, with this administration, is very, very important, as well as investing in equipment and relocating. Not only do you need to relocate for some of our benefits, but actually you need to sign and apply before you make your decision to relocate. Some of the programs I'm going to speak to now, this is a show of hands so I have an idea. Has anyone heard of the city's largest tax abatement program, ICAP, the Industrial Commercial Abatement Program? Anyone? All right, so I'll at least give it. This basically is the premier program for the city. What it does is, working with a developer or a tenant, or multiple tenants in a building that may need to be upgraded. Basically, New York is an old, modern city. So we're trying to infuse private dollars into our building stock. And typically, we try to do this above 96th Street and in the other 4 boroughs. Okay? So what this basically does is, if money is infused into a building, typically above a certain threshold, which is 30% of the existing assessed value, of course, the taxes would increase. We can abate a portion of that increase of property taxes and keep you basically on level of what the taxes were before. So the real property tax burden doesn't increase to the same extent. And depending on the primary use of the property, it can be anywhere from 12 years up to 25 years. And if it's manufacturing, which sometimes technology and biotechnology can be considered, even 3-dimensional modeling now, there's an evolution of what had not been industrial and can be. And we work with the State Department of Taxation and Finance when we do our concierge service to ensure that which you would qualify. You may be able to qualify for the industrial benefits, which are up to 25 years. And remember, this is relief of the increase in property taxes. Now you would say to me, Don, maybe you won't, I don't know, but you might say, Don, I'm a new business, I don't own my property, I'm not going to renovate. Well, in New York City, most companies that rent have triple net leases. You know what that means? If the taxes go up on the property, you inherit that burden, typically by some type of escalator clause or by the percentage of space that you operate in. So you want to know that up front. We don't control your lease negotiation with your landlord, but if you know that your investment, and perhaps a few other tenants' investment, can relieve the property of an increase in taxes, then you perhaps have relieved yourself of an increase going forward. And the building is upgraded. 2, in the area of Lower Manhattan below Murray Street, we do, again, it's now evolving into a mixed use environment, which may be conducive, as Williamsburg and other, and Red Hook in certain areas have become more of a 24-hour community for certain types of emerging industries, more attractive, say. We have, it's funny you were speaking of film, we have a lot of production, post-production, animation, new technologies that are moving into these areas. Below Murray Street, we have programs where the landlords have renovated the properties, upgraded the commercial towers. We had areas where Con Ed, they shared Con Ed gateways. This again is to underscore the older nature of some of the buildings. They've been modernized. And if you move below Murray Street in Manhattan, if you move above 96th Street and some of the other boroughs, you can receive a rent reduction. And in New York, in certain areas, there's also a commercial rent tax. You can be relieved of a commercial rent tax. So again, to recap, there's the Industrial Commercial Abatement Program to reduce the relocation taxes, and a commercial rent tax reduction depending on where you move. In addition, we have what is the country's second largest energy benefit, and it's designed not so much for energy conservation and efficiency, although that is a goal, but it's called the Energy Cost Savings Program. I see yawn, so I'm going to be quick, I'll try. And this is like full of acronyms here. The Energy Cost Savings Program basically does this. Energy is a huge cost in New York City for all businesses, whether you rent or you lease. And I'm going to give you a good word of advice. If you grow in this town, try to control your energy costs. Get an account in your own name. My colleague Brenda Snyder is one of our project managers, knows this all too well. I've been doing this for 20 years on and off. Work with small to large businesses. Energy is a consistent cost. It can become a chronic cost. And at times, if you're sub-metered or you have rent inclusion, you may not control the actual dollar value of your energy. So you want to do that. But what this program does is this. If you grow, say you're unable, you're not fortunate enough to be in one of the incubators, but you are in Manhattan or an area that's changing or evolving, and you want to move and we want you to stay in the city. If you move in the city of New York out of certain targeted areas, actually one is Manhattan south of 96th Street, to anywhere else in the city, or if you stay and like where you are, or you're moving within a borough and you renovate your building and you meet a certain threshold, we can reduce your energy burden for 12 years. 8 years, up to 45% of the regulated energy costs, followed by a phase-out. And the phase-out is another kind of segue into what I'm going to say. Most of the benefits, and I won't go into all because I'll bore you, is the concept of phase-outs. We realized when we didn't have phase-outs and the energy, and the benefits, the corporate tax credits, and tax incentives, the abatement stopped. You had sticker shock as seeing what it would be. And oftentimes the length had been so long. So what we've done is we phase out the programs. Plus, some of the programs can be accessed again. So if you, during a course, say these are long, 12 years, 25 years, you may want to renovate your building again. You may upgrade. You may grow and want to leave. Some of the benefits can be triggered. And one of our benefits, called REAP, the Relocation Employment Assistance Program, again, it's alphabet soup. This program provides the ability to move with you if you receive the benefit. And what it does, it was actually in response to something called, we have REAP, Jersey had BEEP. So, that's an accountant joke. I'm an accountant. I'm not the accountant. The tax can be dry. Sorry, Andrew. What REAP does is, if you move into certain zones, again, we want you to move smart. So you don't move from an area that was industrial that's no longer going to be industrial. If you move into certain manufacturing and commercial zones, or our industrial business zones, which we've set up in the city, you can receive a tax credit for moving into one of these zones, but through REAP, you can receive up to $3,000 per employee that you relocated. Now, it may not be for startups, but once you grow, this is an ideal benefit. If you're unable to go to BioBap or the Navy Yard, and you find a location that's suitable for you, if you bring employees, you may be able to receive $3,000. And listen to this, guys. Now, for 5 years after, if you grow employment beyond what you actually relocated, you can receive that credit for those employees. And if you're in a net operating loss, say at the beginning you're young, your taxes may not even be high enough to cover the credit. Some of these credits, like REAP, have actually refundability. So you don't have to worry. Because oftentimes we had situations where someone qualified for a number of benefits, but they didn't have the tax liability to take them. So we include, and you have to ensure that your tax preparer who is wisely reviewing these, that you take advantage of the programs that are most advantageous to you. So with that said, that's basically the overview of some of the as-of rights. We actually created a TurboTax-like feature on our website called Business Express, which is a tool where we compiled all the various benefits, mostly on the state and city side, and somewhat on the feds. We created a prototype where you can actually input information. There's a display page that monetizes some of the programs, and those that cannot be monetized, it indicates which ones you might be eligible for. You can save it, you can go back, you can modify, and it prompts you to actually answer to determine which credits are best. So and that's, you can call 311 or just go to nyc.gov and put in Business Express. So with that, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Jeffrey.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, my name is Jeffrey Lee. I'm a vice president within New York City's Economic Development Corporation. I think I have the heavy lift since I'm the last speaker, so I will try to be brief and as energetic as possible. Just wanted to try to tie all this together just with a minor attempt at a segue, which is that, you know, we are representing different branches of government and different agencies and functions, but we also do work together. You know, for example, some of Steve's colleagues handling New York City projects, as well as Don and his team and my team. Very frequently, we come together to kind of, you know, collaborate and coordinate for companies that are looking to expand and grow within New York City. So just want to put it out there that that, you know, we are working as a team. So just want to give an overview of what kind of services we can provide through New York City Economic Development Corporation. I'm within a group called the Strategic Investments Group, and what we do is we provide customized business solutions for a very wide range of businesses and a very wide scale of operation of businesses that are looking to either come to New York City or they're already in New York City and are looking to move or expand or any sort of permutation of those different possible actions. And we do that in a wide variety of ways, but I just want to break this out a little bit, not just in terms of my group, but sort of EDC as a whole. We do provide assistance for small companies such as startups, and then we also provide other kinds of programs and assistance that might be a benefit for medium and larger companies. And I think because we have a little bit more of a startup audience, just want to touch upon a little bit what some of the kind of smaller startup-oriented initiatives are. So, you know, one theme that we're discussing tonight is the theme of incubator space. EDC has been very active in that realm. In fact, we've launched our 15th incubator just recently. It's actually located in Harlem. It's called the Harlem Bioscience Incubator. It's run by a senior Columbia University faculty member, and you know, just which is true for all of our incubators. It provides small startups with access to state-of-the-art technology, state-of-the-art equipment that on their own would really be very costly or impossible to gain access to. So that's just one example, and through our citywide network and system of incubators, we have incubated 600 businesses that collectively represent about 1,000 employees. So, and you know, we like to think that that's just the start and that's the seed to help these, just as Eva was mentioning, to help these businesses get on their feet and ideally graduate to a larger scale of operation that'll have more impact on the city. So that's one way that we're helping startup-sized businesses. Another one, we're talking about BioBat. So Brooklyn Army Terminal is an asset. It's a city-owned asset that's administered through New York City EDC. Aside from the biotech space, aside from BioBat, there are other you know, very, very large spaces at BAT that are available for a wide range of uses. Just one example, I met with, you know, for example, a company that is doing beverage technology and developing new ways of packaging beverages and carbonating beverages and sort of infusing beverages with different sort of nutrient solutions. They're just one example of the kinds of business that have set up shop at BAT and are now looking to think about what's the next step. They're looking to grow, and so we can work with them all the way through. That's just one example. That BAT is a great space. Immediately adjacent to BAT in the Sunset Park neighborhood is the Bush Terminal, which is another large city-owned asset. There is a lot of space there as well. And again, this is available, space that's available for a wide range of uses, commercial, technology, bioscience, industrial, creative. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of what we can do over there. So, I strongly consider you in thinking about what your options are to consider that as one of your possibilities. And then in terms of last thing I want to touch upon in terms of ways that we're working to help small and startup businesses. There's a wide range of initiatives that our Center for Economic Transformation group within EDC is actively involved in to work with a wide variety of sectors, including among them the technology sector, biotech sector. Just as some examples, in the past year we had an initiative called Take the Helm, and HELM as an acronym, which the LM is for Lower Manhattan. What it was a competitive program targeted to small businesses that are looking to, and definitely highly marketed to new media and technology and technology companies that are looking to locate to Lower Manhattan. That's just an example of the kinds of initiatives that we offer that not only provide some seed money, but also provide technical assistance training, all at no cost to the program participants. There are some other ones as well in the bioscience arena. For example, we just launched the Early Stage Life Sciences Funding Initiative. This is essentially a $100 million funding program, and the goal is to fund 20 new life science ventures by 2020. I mentioned bioscience. We also have an initiative called the Pilot Health Tech NYC program, which essentially it's a matching program which matches startups with established healthcare professionals and institutions to mentor them and help them grow and emerge and graduate out of the startup phase and become more self-sufficient. So those are some of the initiatives, and keep in mind that we are constantly rolling out new initiatives that are geared towards either specific sectors or specific geographic areas, but there's a constant infusion of new programs that are targeted to these smallest businesses. So that's just the overview on what there is for these startups. And then I also want to touch upon a lot of what I do also relates to the medium-sized and large-scale businesses. I'm not sure how many of those are out here, so I'll just touch upon it more briefly. These are the discretionary incentives that Don was alluding to before. They come under the programs of the New York City Industrial Development Agency, as well as Build NYC Resource Corporation. Essentially, if you're making a major capital investment, that is, you're buying real estate for your company, or you are long-term leasing a significant portion of space in a building, again, for your company, and your project size is anywhere north of $1 million, it's worth sitting down and having a conversation. We can offer very valuable incentives in the form of real estate tax benefits, sales tax benefits, and mortgage recording tax benefits, all of which can bring down not only the transactional costs for you to get into that space and to build it out, but also to operate and control your operating expenses over a long-term period of time. Through Build NYC, we have tax-exempt bond financing for certain larger industrial projects, such as aviation, active maritime projects, recycling facilities, solid waste disposal and treatment facilities, things of that nature. And so again, those are for the bigger projects. Also want to mention that besides those forms of financial assistance or actual financing, we have an in-house tax credit sourcing team, which essentially identifies eligible projects that would be a good fit for new markets tax credit or historic tax credit investment, and then leverages our national pool of relationships with equity investors and equity syndicators, tax credit syndicators, that are actively looking for New York City investments. Just an example, new markets tax credit equity is really free money from a company's perspective. You're helping, basically you are a piece of the puzzle that allows a tax credit investor to take advantage of the tax credit. But the result to the company is that it's free money, it's free equity that goes into their project. So that's the big picture, and I'll be available later on for questions as well.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. My company has the opportunity to work with the Center for Economic Transformation, running one of those new initiatives in the life sciences, the eLab NYC program. And our experience has been that there is this coordination among these programs and the agencies who are aware of the individual participants in them and pass along the names of those participants and have active discussions about them. So it is a collaborative process. Getting involved and getting to know one helps getting to know about other programs. They're very open about what the programs are, what the new initiatives coming up are, and they're very eager to see people be successful. So this is a very good thing. You're not in a situation where, because you work with one, you're kind of compromising your opportunities to get funded by another. They're very much looking for people to be successful and to help share that information. So you've heard about an awful lot of programs here. So I just want to ask a couple of questions of the audience to kind of help people sift through this. And then we're going to have Anshin kind of come and try and give you a perspective about when you look at all of these stacked city, state, on top of that, federal incentives. What does that really mean for your business? I mean, Jeffrey was really articulate about sharing with us his capital costs. The amount that he had to raise for capital was reduced by 10% because of that. That's huge. And right now, what we're seeing, your ability to raise capital by leveraging other people's money, including grant funding, state funding, incentives, is extremely attractive. So those are very helpful initiatives to be aware of. But I think just to kind of cut across this, if there were some profiles of ideal applicants, and I think when we went through this is more of a startup, small business community. Can you share, industry-wise, who you're looking to support, who, if you've awarded these, if there are deadlines coming up that people should be aware of. But I think just to start out with, if you have an awardee profile that you could share, could you do that for your programs? And maybe Jeffrey, we'll start with you and then just go down.
Sure. So in terms of the sector, I think there really is something for everyone. So whether it's technology or media or industrial, there really is something there. But for these startups, whether I would say media, technology, bioscience, it's worth looking at whether the existing suite of EDC initiatives has something, because it's very likely that there is something that's either ongoing or something that is in the planned launch phase, and it's worth sitting down and having an active conversation about that.
I would say typically beyond retail, most commercial and industrial firms would be probably good candidates for our benefits. Typically at least having a year in business, so there's at least one taxable year. However, if it's a truly initial startup in its infancy, the programs that are relocation based, specifically those where you relocate into a property that I stated that has been renovated in the boroughs. And most often it's a firm that initiated in certain areas of Brooklyn or Manhattan south of 96th Street that has outgrown its space and needs to relocate. So our typical scenario would be a firm, perhaps a year or two or less, moves to oftentimes Brooklyn Army Terminal. This is a very good example. The non-biotech area. The Brooklyn Army Terminal, because of the investments both by EDC and some of the other tenants, met the threshold, which pre-qualifies the building to benefit all tenants that relocate into it and receive the energy reduction benefit.
The war story is we missed out on the first year of biotech tax credit because we missed a deadline. And that's a six-figure number. That would have been a six-figure number for us. The other thing is I'm happy to hear that the REAP program may have been
As of last Monday, the governor,
resuscitated.
we're waiting for the green light, but it looks as though.
I haven't signed the lease with EVA because you cannot have signed lease. You have to apply for REAP and be approved first. We were told that by a REAP representative, and we were told that the program was under review. So one of the reasons, although we are moving to Biobat, one of the reasons we haven't signed the lease is you may not do it backwards. You have to get the REAP application in and approved, then you can sign a lease. You can show the draft lease. I think you have to show the draft lease. So some of these things are on the website, and they're quite serious about it.
So many of these programs have different eligibility, so probably can't go through all of it, but most of the deadlines are in fact rolling on these programs. In terms of programs like the Small Business Revolving Loan Fund, Link Deposit, JDA, and those things usually follow the New York State small business definition, which is broad. Anyone under that definition can qualify. So that's generally, independently owned and operated, not dominant in its field, under 100 employees located in the state. So that's very general. Those are sort of our general small business programs. Startup has its own eligibility. So it's really focused on net new jobs only and sort of no shirt changing. So you can't really just go from one area to another. It has to be sort of new business activity that's happening. Certainly anti-fraud provisions of a program this size, very important there. Does require job commitments. There are some excluded businesses. You can see the list on the websites: retail and wholesale, restaurants, real estate brokers, law firms, medical and dental practices, and so forth. And so you can see that there. In terms of the equity funds, those are typical equity in the sense that they do need to be equity worthy. So it is focused on high growth entrepreneurship where we get a return. Hopefully the state, even though our return expectations may not be exactly the same, and we're willing to take a little more risk, and we're willing to go into sectors that are underserved, in geographies that are underserved, in stages of development that are underserved, we do want that to be revolving. Technology-wise, in terms of sector, it is still a wide range of sectors, so sectors are not necessarily excluded, but we are also focusing on sectors in areas where you might already be served well. So we might do some digital media in New York City, for example, but digital media is served pretty well by the private sector in New York City, so we may focus on some of the other things, whether it's applied manufacturing or healthcare IT or life sciences and those sorts of things. So something to keep in mind, but the definition is still broad depending on the circumstances. We can still go across many sectors.
Okay, so thank you. What I'd like to do now is have Paul Gebertsman come from Anshin to wrap up and talk about the tax implications of all of these, including the federal. We are going to run past when we're going to be able to take questions from the audience. So we're going to, after Paul speaks, we're going to have the panel move 2 tables at the back so that you can ask your specific questions to the individual program directors. We provided a lot of time for that, so we'll encourage you to also get something to eat and drink. But please, first, welcome Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I've been sitting here listening tonight, And again, first of all, I'm Paul Gewirtzman, and I head the tax credits and incentives practice here at Anshin. So being that you're here in the home office of the premier accounting firm in the state of New York, and we have such a strong tax credits and incentives practice, I think it would be shameful if we didn't say a few words about the tax aspects of some of these great programs you've heard about tonight. So first of all, I want to comment that I think the panel has done a great job in giving a lot of details and some very intricate and significant programs in New York. In fact, they've done such a great job. I'm not sure what else there is I can add on some of the state programs. I'll try to maybe go into a little bit, but I think they've really done a terrific job on it. So all I have left here is to stand up here and tell some jokes. So in the credits and incentives world, the motto is don't leave money on the table. So too many times, you've heard some of the stories here about. I've met with companies that, not just startup companies that have been around for a while, that had they only known about something, they could have gotten a benefit. Right? They've done what they were supposed to do. They just didn't know about it. Didn't get that application in, or didn't follow all the rules, as Jeffrey said. Right? And that's very, very important. I do want to comment one thing. Jeffrey made a very important comment about meeting deadlines and following rules with the REAP program that obviously just got reinstated. While it's true that generally under REAP you cannot sign that lease, I believe there is a provision where there may be some relief in the event that you sign the lease during the period that the program was in abeyance, because they couldn't process your application. But as a general rule, you're absolutely right. But if there's someone out there who in the last 6 months or so did sign a lease and might otherwise be eligible for REAP, you should not just write it off. Again, it's about not leaving money on the table. So my job is really to open your eyes and tell you what's out there and make sure you don't miss anything. So it's really about, and again, you've heard snippets of a lot of different programs tonight, the Link Deposit Program, the ICAP, Startup, Excelsior, all these different programs. And some of them are really what you would call game-changing programs. Right now, a game changer. So, in the tech world, you talk about what is a game changer. Everybody knows what this is. Everybody knows what this is. When I was in school, right, I never thought I would not be able to leave the house in the morning without this thing. Now my notes for this speech, if I had any, would be on here. And I couldn't speak up here without this. Right? Something that changed everybody's game. A decade ago, here's another one. I don't know if you remember this one. Right? A year after this came out, everybody threw away their Walkmans. I know you're saying, what's a Walkman? But that's a game changer. In the tax credits and incentives world, we also have game changers. And some of the programs that you've heard about tonight, and one that I'll talk about at the federal level, are game changers. Really can make a difference in your business. So we talked about startup. Obviously, startup is the big game in town. You see all the commercials about it. And as Steve mentioned, you can get into it. 10 years, no taxes. How can you beat that? Even your employees, no taxes. It's a great program. Obviously, it is more difficult to get into it down in this region, simply because there's less space available, because some of the restrictions are harder. Sure, it was designed a little bit to help businesses upstate, but think about this. New York State really helped design this for tech companies and for startup companies, right? So even in this region, right, where this wasn't the main focus of startup, they said, okay, we're going to have to carve out something that can be done down here. And what did they carve out? They said, you've got to be either a startup or a tech company to get into it in this region. So they are really focused on tech companies. The Excelsior Jobs Program, which was also mentioned. Right? Now that program started under Governor Patterson. Initially, didn't get a lot of traction, right? Because it came out during a recession. They set job thresholds and capital investment thresholds which were just too high for what was going on in the real world. Even companies that tried to get into it had to back out because they just couldn't hit those numbers. So last year under Governor Cuomo, at the same time the startup came out, they said, you know what, let's change this game also. Right? And they lowered all the thresholds. So to get into Excelsior for a company, you have to hit certain job numbers or project that you're going to hit certain job numbers over a 5-year period. The lowest threshold out there is for software developers, for R&D companies, scientific, 5 jobs over a 5-year period. That's all you have to project. That's all you have to hit in order to get initial eligibility into the program. All right? Other industries, distributors, 75 jobs. Back office, financial services, 50 jobs. Manufacturers, 10 jobs. The lowest threshold is for tech companies. All right? So they want tech companies in New York State. These programs are being specifically designed to help tech companies. Now, I'm going to spend the last few minutes that I have talking about a federal program that exists, that expired, and that is going to get better for you. Right? Now, many of you are familiar with the federal R&D program. We talked a little bit about New York State R&D, but the federal R&D program, which really started in the Reagan era, is one of those credits that's out there. It's been around forever, but expires every couple of years, goes on abeyance, gets renewed every time, right? Because they can't put it in the budget. It's very hard. It would destroy the whole budget if they tried to make it a permanent deduction. They try, but they never do it. Right now, it expired at the end of 2013. Everybody agrees it's going to be extended. There's a bill right now, just literally in the last 5 days, got out of the Senate Finance Committee to not only renew all of the extenders, including R&D. R&D would be extended for another 2 years through 2015, but would make it a much better program. Now, R&D, again, I don't really have to explain R&D to companies in the technology industry. Anytime you're coming out with a new product, a new process, changing a product or a process, you are doing R&D. Now, not everything you do is going to qualify for the credit, right? It has to be something that's new and innovative for you. It doesn't have to be new to the world. It has to be a new process for you, right? And the time to capture it is when you haven't yet gone to market. Once you go to market with a product, your R&D phase is done. So you need to capture it early on. The problem is, most companies who are in their R&D phase are not making money, right? And the problem with the credit always was, you only utilize it against tax. Unlike some of the great credits in New York State, like the Excelsior Jobs Program, which are all refundable benefits, the federal R&D credit was never refundable. So if you didn't have tax, you couldn't use it. You could carry it over up to 20 years. Maybe someday you'll get to use it, but you're spending money now doing an engineering study, getting all of that work done. Maybe you'll get to use it down the road. A lot of companies weren't that interested. Plus, as a lot of you know, there's a concept at the federal level of the alternative minimum tax. The alternative minimum tax forces many taxpayers at both a corporate level and a personal level to pay tax that they otherwise wouldn't have had to pay because of all these preference items, and you hear all about it, and they just don't get rid of it. It was designed for the very wealthy, but it really affects most of us in this room today. So the R&D credit was never good against the alternative minimum tax. So again, if you couldn't use it, got carried over 20 years, maybe you'll get to use it. Did people really want to pay for that expense? And so the big, the Fortune 500 of the world, they did their R&D studies because they could utilize it. The smaller companies, a lot of times, were not going ahead and taking advantage of it. The change in the program that has been proposed, and actually Senator Schumer is one of the primary sponsors on this bill, so you may want to contact him and just let him know that you're really behind this, is to change it in 2 ways. One, for smaller companies, and that hasn't been defined yet, but when they did this in 2010 for a 1-year deal, it was defined as companies with less than $50 million of revenue, not that small. No AMT impact. So even if you're in the AMT, it's a good credit for the AMT as well. And the second, the bigger one, more important for startup and tech companies, a refundability feature in this sense. If you have less than $5 million in gross receipts, and if you are in the first 5 years of existence, a true startup, then you can get your credit refunded, basically up to $250,000 worth of payroll taxes that you have paid. So the payroll taxes that you pay on your employee, you will get back as a refund. So you don't have to worry about profitability. So even if you're in your startup years where you've got people doing the R&D, but you can't have income to offset it against, you can still get that benefit. So I think that's really a game changer at the federal level that we should all get behind. It's going to make a big difference in the R&D world, and I think people are really going to be able to take advantage of it. I think what we're going to do now is break to the back.
Right to the back.
All right, so I'll leave that to
Thank you.
Mary.
Thank you so much. And
All right,
thank you.
We'll be
Thank you to
available as we
Anthony
roll
for this.
out.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.